Welcome to Bigger Than the Game with Deremy and Jose. I'm Deremy Dove, and I'm joined by the man, the myth, the legend, my tag team partner in crime, Mr. Jose Ruiz. What's going on, brother?
Deremy Dove. I'm gonna start calling you Dove.
Yeah.
Nah, man, living a dream, man. It's always good to be here. It's good to be back, always on the show, man, and I'm excited for tonight.
Nah, I'm pumped for this episode too, man.
Yeah.
Because it's one of those cool things that we can see history kind of, happening and changing and evolving in due time. And that's one of the blessings of doing this show. We, going on this is year 3, that one of these previous topics we're like, where is it at now? And then something happens present that now, we got to look at it again because it's changing. And the Super Bowl just happened not too long ago. And Andy Reid gets his second Super Bowl win, Jose.
Yeah, and, we did one of our first episodes was on Big Red, Andy Reid, and, we both have a lot of love for Andy Reid, not only for everything that he's done here, like with the Eagles and stuff like that, like how he turned that organization around and made the Eagles pretty much what they are today, is like one of the prominent NFL teams in the league. So, but to see him leave and the way he kind of left was not any sit well with a lot of us, and then to see him go to Kansas City and have even more success, it's bittersweet almost, because again, like I wish he was still here, but if there was any other team other than the Eagles for me that I would want to succeed is Kansas City because of Andy Reid.
Right, and we are Philly bait, like we're from Philly, but we talk about everything that all sports and national. But it's just you got to give credit because that was our second episode back in early 2020 before the pandemic hit. Yep. Andy Reid had gotten his first Super Bowl win, and so for people who you can hear what we said, before you can listen, check those archives,
check them,
and you can hear where we put Andy then. And then to see that he's had, from that first Super Bowl win, he's had 3 consecutive AFC Championship Game appearances,
Jeez.
2 Super Bowl appearances after that, and another Super Bowl title. So, like, his legacy has continued to rise. And the crazy thing is, I don't see it slowing down anytime soon, Jose.
I don't either. Like, he's got the best player in the league at his disposal, and the thing is with Coach Reid, it's like the one thing he can do is coach quarterbacks, right? Like, and he's an offensive genius, and that gets thrown around a lot. Like, you see all these younger guys coming into the league now, and they have a pretty good system, and they're geniuses. No, this is an offensive genius. And then the thing is, like, we were talking about the Super Bowl, this year's Super Bowl with the Eagles and Chiefs, and what happened in this game, it was like a perfect setup for us to do this episode. It was, obviously we all watched the Super Bowl, right? Eagles came out, was playing really well. Halftime came. Coach Reid had that long extended halftime, and the Eagles could not stop them in the second half. It was just he outcoached this whole Eagles staff, Jonathan Gannon, he schooled him. He schooled everybody, and they could not stop the Chiefs offense, and again, it just had me thinking, like, wow, like this guy's still at the top of his game. How long he's been coaching at this point? Well, he got hired by the Eagles was 98?
99.
99 when McNabb came in. Yeah, so that's a long time ago. You know what I'm saying? Like, and the thing is, like, we look at players and we go, oh man, look at those numbers. Like, it's if you look at a coach and his coaching numbers, like. Obviously, we just mentioned he started in 99. He's missed the playoffs in his first season. The Eagles were terrible. He was 5-11. But out of all those seasons, he's missed the playoffs 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times. That's incredible.
In the past 24, 25 seasons.
Right. Like that's incredible. Yeah, and to do that consistently in this day and age with free agency and all that stuff, like I look at that Patriots dynasty as, like, to me, the top dynasty of all time because of like the ever-changing rosters and things like that. But what Andy Reid is doing, you can't stack it with the New England dynasty because they got Super Bowls, but he's right there neck and neck in a way.
Well, what's interesting is for most of the turn of the century, it's been because of that Patriot dynasty. Bill Belichick's the best coach of the century. He's been, people who's the best coach in the NFL was always you're fighting for second is Belichick. But you can really look, and definitely in this 2020s decade, Andy Reid has really taken that title away from Bill Belichick as he's the best coach in the National Football League. Yep. Now, do you think, because the thing I've been hearing people say is the game is so tailor-made for offense, that's why Andy Reid is now the best coach in the game and it's not Bill Belichick. So do you think like it's kind of set up for Andy Reid to be the best coach, or did he really take that title from Bill Belichick?
I think a little bit of both, for sure. And I don't mean to give you that like vanilla answer, but I think he's evolved, right? Like you got to give him credit. And one thing, and I think Belichick has evolved too, but like the stuff that Andy Reid is doing, man, like I've never seen it before offensively. And it's not like it would have been different if it was just the same system and then now with the same system, he's having all this success. I don't think it's that. You know what I'm saying? Like I think it's him evolving as an offensive mind, looking at what the NFL is today, looking at the type of players he has, and it definitely helps to have the best quarterback in the game and then a Hall of Fame tight end at your disposal, which creates a crazy mismatches for them all the time. But like I just think he's evolved and helped shift the game the way it is today as well. Like he's a big part of that. So I do think he did take it a little bit from Belichick, but I just think the way stuff has changed and how offenses can run free, it just like allowed him like to have this whole space to do a whole lot of crazy things on the field.
No, absolutely. I do agree with that. I think he's been a big part of that change and bringing that college offense into the NFL. And you got to give credit, because I can maybe look at, earlier in the Mahomes run of how talented the Chiefs teams were. But people were kind of getting a little annoyed with the Chiefs talking like no one respected us. But I do remember, it's recent history, but when Tyreek Hill in that trade, signing trade, he went to Miami. Oh, man, they're losing the cheetah. And Tyreek Hill's a bad man. It's a big part of that offense. And then you got Juju Smith-Schuster, and who were these receivers? And then the Broncos in the division. The Broncos get Russell Wilson. Devontae Adams going to the Vegas Raiders. Yeah. The Chargers, Justin Herbert now, another year. People were saying, like a lot of people did pick the Chiefs to maybe, not win the AFC West. So this is also, if you look at this team, Mahomes, best quarterback in the game, Kelsey, best tight end, a future Hall of Famer. It's not a talented squad, Jose.
Yeah, I will say this. A part of me, when we talk about Reid and Belichick, I think what's also separated Andy Reid is his drafts. You know what I'm saying? Like, if you look at what New England has done, and if you look at what Kansas City has done, it's night and day. You know what I'm saying? Like, so I also think that's keeping the Chiefs relevant. Because if you look at this Chiefs team, you're right. It's probably not the most talented team, but they were the fourth youngest team in the playoffs. Like, and just think about that. Like, they just won the Super Bowl. They were the fourth youngest team in the playoffs. Their secondary was all rookies, I believe it was. Yeah. All playing high level. That offensive line is I think all three of the Pro Bowlers were like under 3 years in the league or something like that. It's incredible, and the thing is, and we talked about it in our last episode, the one thing Big Ray can do is draft some big guys up front. Defensive lineman, offensive lineman. You got Chris Jones now. If you want to take it to the Super Bowl just now, like some of the Eagles' key players, Andy Reid drafted them.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? You got Brandon Graham, Jason Kelsey, Fletcher Cox. Like, those were all Andy Reid. These are all Andy Reid guys still. You know what I'm saying? Like, so that just goes to show you his talent for drafting offensive, defensive linemen. And I think that's what's separating them right now from Belichick at this moment is he's able to consistently keep a good team where Belichick is struggling right now with that. And so I think, but you're right. Like, if you look at what the Chiefs have done, the thing is, what people are getting annoyed at is Kelsey up there talking about y'all didn't think we were gonna make the playoffs.
Yeah,
I don't know about that. Like, we thought they were making the playoffs, but we did think they were going to take a step back, and they didn't.
Right. So that, and I think, yeah, they took it. They're taking it too far, like that disrespect, but it's true
But
to
they
an
need to use
extent.
that though. Whatever you need to
Right.
use is going to work.
And it's true to an extent. I mean, the mayor of Cincinnati saying, Burrowhead, and like that's pretty ballsy that they were doing up in the Natty. So I mean, some people were pretty talking some stuff there. So I mean, I can't blame them for having that chip on their shoulder. Now, to what you just said, in Philadelphia, Andy Reid was kind of at the end. Howie Roseman kind of was rising up, but really, Andy was one of those few guys like Belichick, where like they may have a guy in there who's a GM. But at Philadelphia, when Andy was there, he was the head coach and the personnel maker, like decision maker. Belichick is like that too. Andy Reid and KC took a step up where he focuses on coaching and not being the guy. Obviously, he has a big say in personnel.
Yeah, absolutely.
And they work tandem, but he's not pretty much being head coach and really GM. Belichick is still head coach and GM. So do you think that has a factor in what we've seen where Andy's overtaken Belichick, like that Andy's just sticking just to coaching?
Yeah, I think in any sport, it's hard to do that, to be both. You know what I'm saying? Like, and I've seen there's a list of coaches who gotten all that authority, as they always say. And, we talk about Bill Parcells a lot on this podcast. And, you got to let me do the shopping, right? Like, you know what I mean? You want me to cook, you got to let me do the shopping too. And, I think a lot of coaches get that power and just don't have the ability to do that. I mean, you could be a great coach, doesn't mean you have an eye for talent, and only like those real special coaches have that. And I just think Belichick, he's struggling right now with that. You know what I'm saying? Like, and he's whiffing on a lot, especially like he's struggling like the wide receiver position, like the running back position. Like, I mean, they got Stevenson now, but it's it's been a struggle, and I just think Andy's hitting on like Andy and the Chiefs are hitting on some home runs when it comes to like guys up front, and New England is not doing that.
In this whole, I hate to make it Andy and Belichick, but it's just so fascinating to me because you watch the podcast. Brandon Marshall has the I Am Athlete podcast, and a big running debate. He's had LaShawn McCoy on, guys who played there. And like people on the outside are like, it's split Belichick and Brady. But a lot of McCoy, who played with Brady, was like, they do it because of Tom. They had Asante Samuel come on, and he said Belichick's all right, but Tom's the reason why he did it. So, do you look at it and kind of can see like, and it can go to other coaches too besides Belichick, but it's like Andy's won Super Bowls with just Pat Mahomes. But he's had great success, like you said, with McNabb, with Alex Smith, with other Jeff Garcia. He even, if Andy doesn't get 6 Super Bowl rings, but say he maybe gets 1 or 2 more, would you look at him and say he could be better than rank him over Belichick if Belichick continues to really not succeed without Brady?
That's tough. That's tough for me. As much as. And I'm a huge Andy Reid fan. I'm probably just as big of a Bill Belichick fan. That's a tough one. You know what I'm saying? Like, because again, you got to get over the hump. You know what I mean? Like, and Coach Reid has not done that. And yes, having Patrick Mahomes is definitely helping him out. That's a tough one, man. Like, that's a good question. Because if he does get 1 or 2 more, then it gets interesting. You know what I'm saying? Like, it definitely does. And it's almost like the Jordan LeBron kind of like conversation. Like, but I mean, he has gotten there with other guys, and you just need that guy to get you over the top. And he's got the guy now in Mahomes. That's interesting. You got me on that one.
Only because it's like, I think if Belichick doesn't win another one, but
which I don't see happening.
I don't think so either.
Yeah,
and I think, but if Mac Jones, whoever at quarterback, he has some deep playoff runs and he has like pretty good success, that's a knock. Like I don't look at it as like, well, he didn't win another one without Brady. He's having success right now. I mean, they have one playoff appearance and they got bounced in that one badly. He's not really getting that success, so that's where I'm like, man, Bill Belichick kind of, his Cleveland resume, which isn't that great. And then post Brady, if he's struggling, it just kind of makes you wonder. It's like, man, it was Tom TB12 was really carrying that load.
And then, see, now you really got me wondering, because then it's like when Belichick's a great coach, but when he gets to New England, there's a ton of talent there too. You know what I'm saying? Like, so it's not like, he brought in the Rabels and all that, but like there was a lot of talent there too, especially defensively. And say some of them guys are not there. Is he going to draft all these guys again and bring like other different guys and bring them in and have the same success? That's the question there. That's the question mark.
That's actually, you didn't even know. That's a perfect segue to my next kind of like point here is this past Super Bowl, have like the Kelsey Bowl, which is cool, but the Andy Reid Bowl, because it was
pretty much, yeah,
Eagles, Chiefs, a lot of key people who were on the Eagles still were Andy Reid, draft picks, Andy Reid guys. And when we look at coaches and legacies, and you kind of just mentioned it, Belichick, those first 3 Super Bowls outside of Tom Brady, a lot of those key guys, pretty much the rest of them, for the most part, are Bill Parcells guys.
Yeah.
I look at like when the Bucs won it in 2002, John Gruden was the coach, and give him credit. He brought in that offensive mind. He got him over the hump. But Tony Dungy, he had built them up. When you're ranking coaches, Jose, and like their legacy, if they have a blueprint on another franchise that gets it done, but they weren't the coach to do it, is that something that you kind of put in that coach's like resume, like as like a notch, or do you kind of look at it and go, yeah, it's a nice thing, but you didn't get it done as the head coach, so I'm not going to give that to you?
Yeah, it's a knock for me. Because if
it's a knockdown, like it's a negative, you're saying?
Right. If you had the talent and you couldn't get it done, and then someone else comes in and gets it done, then yeah, that's a knock for me. Now, like I'm thinking of like, and you could even flip it like with Tony Dungy and like the Colts. You know what I'm saying? Like, and he walks into like Manning and all these guys, like, you know what I mean? Like, and like if you look at something like that, and if it's like a young team, then maybe I'm not going to knock the coach too much. You know what I'm saying? Like if you're drafting these guys and they're starting to develop, but something happens and you had to move on, and then somebody else comes in and they win, then all right, like that's. But if you had these guys for a couple of years and they were playing at a high level and you couldn't get them over the hump, and then a Gruden comes in and gets them over the hump. Now, if Tony Dungy is coaching the Bucs, that Super Bowl season, do they win the Super Bowl? I don't know if they beat the Eagles in Philly. You know what I'm saying? Like if Gruden is not the coach, they'll beat the Raiders. You know what I'm saying? But even that, it's because Gruden had that game plan pretty much memorized still. So, like, I think it's a knock. You know what I'm saying, for the coach, for the coach that doesn't get it done.
Well, because I wonder, because like with Andy Reid, the Eagles Super Bowl 5 years ago, Doug Peterson's a protege. Jeffrey Lurie said when he hired Doug Peterson, he's looking for someone with emotional intelligence, an Andy Reid-like guy. There was a lot of guys, even more, who were there, who were under Andy Reid with that Super Bowl win. The blueprint's still there 5 years later. So he didn't win a Super Bowl, but you can honestly see his fingerprints on the past 5 years with the Eagles and those 2 Super Bowl appearances. And I do think about like Parcells, he left. Yeah, he did get to a Super Bowl with the Patriots, but he left. And Belichick, Brady emerges, got to give that props. But a lot of those guys, those glue guys, were Parcells guys, but he wasn't the guy to get them over the hump, And Tony Dungy is like that as well with the Buccaneers, and there's other examples too. Right. So it's just wondering, like, is that where do you look at that with somebody? I don't know. It's tough. I would say this. I don't knock it. I won't call it a knock, but I don't know if I'm going to, because you didn't do it. It's a nice thing, but I'm not going to put that in your resume when we're debating greatest coaches.
Right. And even like to the analogy you use, like the Reid and Doug Peterson, at least you had Chip Kelly in the middle there. You know what I'm saying? Like, and Chip had a couple of years there, and a couple of his guys were like on that 2017 team that you're referencing, like the Lane Johnsons, and he brings in like Foles and things like that. Well, Foles was an Andy guy, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I think Foles was Andy.
yeah. And then but even like that, the quarterback position wasn't really like, it was more of a Wentz thing, and I was a Doug guy. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, so there was some separation. I just feel like with the New England Belichick, there was no separation. It was like, here's the team. Like, you know what I mean? Like, this is your team now. And
well, Pete Carroll was in the middle.
He was in the middle. That's right. I was trying to think if he was before or after Belichick. After Parcells, but Pete Carroll was. It's the same kind of thing. Then that makes sense. That's tough, man. This is like really close. And I didn't even I'm gonna be very honest with you, Deremy. Like, my mindset on this episode was not like the Belichick Andy Reid thing. So I'm glad you kind of did that. But it's close. You know what I mean? Like, it's very similar.
It's very close. It's close, and it's become Andy Reid's the best coach in the game.
Yeah,
and that was Belichick's title since 2001. That he was the best. It was who's fighting for second, and from I'll say 2020 to present day, Andy Reid is taking that title. And it's just fascinating because he's still right. We could do this episode again in a couple years, and then it's like, man, where are we saying it? So it's just fascinating to me, and it's funny because with certain coaches, I don't mind being honest. I always am on this show. I know you are too. Where when Tony Dungy got into the Hall of Fame, I'm like, hey, he did turn Tampa's franchise around. And that was something I said as like a positive for him, even though he didn't get the job done fully with Tampa, So it's like, I don't know, it's like, can we really give him all of that when he didn't get the job done? Jimmy Johnson, he won 2, but we look at that third one as like, well, Barry was the coach, but that really Jimmy's the thing for 3. But Jimmy left or, got forced out or however you want to look at it. But so it's like, we kind of credit him for 3, but he won 2. He did not win 3. Bill Walsh gets credit for 4. He won 3. So it's like I'm challenging myself, but then the people who listen to this show, the historians, it's like we have to be consistent with that. Where is it just about did you get the job done and what the wins and losses say, final? Or do we look at like, well, you helped turn this franchise around and that gets, even though you didn't get it done fully.
Right. Now, I'll say this. If in a like Jimmy Johnson example, a Bill Walsh example, I'm not knocking them for that last Super Bowl. You know what I'm saying? Like, my mindset on that question was, it was more of the Tony Dungy example.
Yeah.
There was no Super Bowl. You know what I'm saying? Like, and the guy comes in and wins one. But like, if that other case, then no, I'm not. You can't knock him for that. Now, to use the same example, like if it's like a amazing turnaround, right? Like what Tony Dungy did with the Bucks and what that Bucks organization did, coming from like what we remember them as kids, they were terrible, laughing stock of the league, to like they won the Super Bowl and they were one of the hottest teams in the NFL for a long time. And I think that if you don't win one, but if you do that somewhere, like we were talking about, we did our episode, with the Seahawks and 49ers rival, and it's like, yeah, Mike Holmgren kind of started that resurgence in Seattle, but what Pete Carroll did in Seattle, like you got to, like, even if he didn't win one, I'm still like, I might bump him up because what he shifted, like, for that organization was tremendous. And I think Andy Reid did the same thing. Like, Eagles were terrible when he came along and then immediately turned them around. Like, yeah, they were 5-11 his first season, but after that, they were on and running, and the thing is with the Chiefs, like, it was success from the jump. You know what I'm saying? Like, and I'm trying to remember that first season with Kansas City. Yeah, they were 11-5. Like, it was immediate success. And then he turned a bust, where everybody called him a bust, and Alex Smith. and turned them, you know what I'm saying? Like turned them into like this almost a Super Bowl winning quarterback. You know what I mean? Like it was just, to me, man, that says a lot. You know what I'm saying? Like, to change the culture of an organization the way some of these guys have. And again, if you don't win the Super Bowl, but you do that and get them to the brink, and yeah, like if the other coach comes in and wins it, like I'm not going to knock you down as much. It's weird to say it like that, but I think there is something to that.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I think it's. And I'm with you on turning, and that's why I have to say, what makes what Andy did even more impressive is you would think the Philadelphia turnaround is the most impressive one, like from building it from the scratch. He inherited, no one talks about, and I mean, I understand why, because it's tragic, but when he comes in, the Javon Belcher situation where he, tragically kills his girlfriend, then commits suicide in the parking lot in front of Scott Pioli and Romeo Crennel. That franchise, there was a lot looming over that franchise when Andy comes in there. And to then see what the next 10 years have been. And like you said, after that 4-12 where a teammate does, commits murder and kills himself, and then it's like, man, that the Chiefs are screwed for a while. To be 11-5 with the same group, that's right. Impressive.
And not only that, like, let's be honest, like even like the Chiefs didn't have like a ton of like success. You know what I'm saying? Like there was, for me, like what I remember the Chiefs, especially growing up, like the Marty years and the Derek Thomas, Neil Smith, all that, like the Montana experiment, like they were always close. You know what I'm saying? Like always close. And then you got Trent Green and Priest Holmes and all these guys doing everything that they were doing, and Gunther Cunningham, like they were always there. They were just there. They never really, and there were some teams that they should have gotten probably to the Super Bowl. But to me, they were always a disappointment for so many years. And to change that type of culture, right? We all knew about like that great home field advantage, like all of that stuff with KC and Arrowhead. But that organization it's not like a winning organization. Like they had a lot of success, but they weren't winning Super Bowls. They weren't even getting to the Super Bowl. And then Andy comes in and just immediately changes them and makes them the hottest organization in the league, the winningest organization in the league. They've won like 100 division titles in a row. They're at, let me see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Like, and then he won 5 out of 6 at one point in Philly. Like, it's just, and then the thing is, like, people were looking at that success in Philly and, that division was terrible, which it was, but still, like, you win like 7, 8 division titles in a row. That's impressive as hell, man.
No, you have to look at it. Let's go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10 years in Kansas City. Only one of those years he doesn't have double-digit wins. That's in 2014. He goes 9-7. That's incredible. So you have 11 wins, 9, 11, 12, 10, 12, 12, 14, 12, 14. He's 117-45 in his 10 years in KC. And, it's just interesting because when, Coach John Madden passed away, and we did an episode about that, and people talking about that high winning percentage he had in Oakland in the 70s, and which was incredible. Yeah. Andy's done that twice now.
I know.
What he did in Philly, and then he did it in KC now. And it's just like, to go 9 out of 10 years with double-digit wins is impressive alone. Let alone like that 1 year you don't get it. It's not like, they went 4-12. They got 9. They were 9-7. Right. They could have made the play. They missed the playoffs that year actually, but they were 9-7. So you're always above 500 in these 10 years here. It's an incredible run that they're having. And like you said earlier, it wasn't like I hate to keep comparing it to Belichick, where it's like just Brady. It was Alex Smith for a good part of that run. Alex Smith and Jamal Charles and Dwayne Bowe. Yeah. It's that group of guys. It's he brought Macklin over with him.
Yeah.
It's impressive.
And then if you what makes it even more impressive to me is that you're talking to AFC now. So who do you got there? You got Brady, you got Manning, you
Big
got Big
Ben.
Ben, right? Like you got all these great quarterbacks, you know, playing in the AFC at that time. Yeah, some of them were at the tail end, like Roethlisberger and Manning were at the tail end, but they were still playing at a high level. And then we all know what Brady was still doing. So it's not like he was in there and he was running into like cupcakes in the playoffs. Like, no, he was playing against great teams and still getting it done. You know what I'm saying? Like, and still winning divisions and still 10 plus wins. It's. I don't know if we're ever going to see this when it comes to like Reid and Belichick, like the success they're having. Like, I don't see this happening again.
No, I don't think people stay as long. I don't think people are as patient. Um, I don't think people, and that's where I think Andy Reid will have it over Belichick, which is Belichick, and that's why I think it's more interesting because people always talked about Brady allowed Belichick to coach him hard, so everyone else fell in line. You don't get that a lot of even these great quarterbacks aren't like totally like that, right? So that's the thing where people respect Belichick player as a head coach, but a lot of guys aren't like, oh, I want to go play for him. A lot of guys, like you see with Gronk and stuff, like hey, freedom. We appreciate it, but freedom. Brady, freedom. So it's like everybody wants to play for Andy Reid. Everyone loves Andy. Everyone wants to be there because he's a great communicator. He makes you feel part of it. He's not a pushover coach. He's real with his players, but he takes accountability and he brings a fun atmosphere, but also real with them too. And I think that's where the difference will be, not in the X's and O's even, but in the fact that you have one coach who brings that kind of atmosphere where players will say, hey, Andy makes you feel like, hey, he gets to know you, your family, everyone. And then players say Bill Belichick kind of, you're lucky if you get a grumble in the hallway when he walks by you. And I think people notice that. Yeah, people notice that.
Yeah, I mean, just think about it. If we want to, like, even use like just a regular 9 to 5, our jobs. You know what I'm saying? Like, if you have a job where it's a good place to work at, you're going to want to go to work. You know what I mean? Like, or if you have, even though you might be making great money and you know you get promoted from more often in this other company, but they treat you like shit. Like, I don't know. Like, I know for some people it's all about money. For some people it's all about winning. You know what I'm saying? Like in the league, some people can handle that. Some players can just do that. Other players are not. Like, other players are about more atmosphere, family oriented, things like that. And a lot of guys want to go to Kansas City. You know what I'm saying? Like, you see a lot of players go over there. Like, but the thing is now, Andy has shifted all of that, and that's a young ass team, man. And they're going to be good for a little while, especially if you keep Mahomes and Kelsey. I think that combination, you add that to that offensive line he built. Oh man, they're going to be a problem for years to come.
And I think it's you're right. And I think we gotta say that it's something special that Andy Reid, we always got him on time management. People always got him on in-game adjustments as well sometimes.
That was big, yep.
And to me, it's special that against his former team, he spent, 14 years in Philadelphia. It wasn't a bad exit or nothing like that. Like, as far as, like, a bad relationship, it was time to go.
Yeah.
But, like, I don't think, like, there was a lot of love and respect from management with Andy Reid. It wasn't, like, nasty when he left. But still, for the critiques he got locally, and then it started to grow nationally, too, once he first got to KC in some of these games. And for this stage, which put him on another level, to silence against his former team, he's down by 10 going into the half. His star quarterback, like, twisted his ankle, don't know how he's going to be. And guess what? It's Steve Spagnuolo, the D coordinator, too. But in-game adjustments is what put him over the edge. I think that's just poetic justice.
It was. He dominated that game, Andy Reid. I think the Chiefs coaching staff as a whole, because you're right, Spags shut down the run, and then the Eagles had a tough time after that. But he dominated, like, offensively, like that. They didn't punt in the second half. They scored on every possession. Like it was an absolute. And the thing is, like the way they scored. You know what I mean? Like dudes was 2 touchdowns. Dudes were wide open. You know what I'm saying? Like, yeah, you can say it's blown coverage. I don't think it was blown coverage. It was scheme, and then the Eagles were confused on how to like defend the scheme. And it was one play. I forget the dude's name. Moore, the rookie,
Sky Moore.
Sky Moore. I was thinking of Clouds. That's what I was thinking of that first thing. But
Clouds Moore.
Yeah, it was the one play where he's running and he's in motion, and then he just stops and runs the other way. Like that play, the Eagles got burnt against Jacksonville, and that was like a Doug Peterson play, and they got burnt against Jacksonville. And then I don't know if Andy picked up on that, ran that twice, 2 wide open touchdowns. It was just, and I'm watching this game, and I'm like, man, like they had them, like the Eagles had them, but when you have better coaching all around, like more experienced coaching, it's hard to beat that, man. And then they shifted, made the adjustments. You knew Mahomes was going to put up points, and another thought process too. And this has nothing to do with Andy Reid. Like I don't know if Mahomes plays if it's a regular game. You know what I'm saying? He had a 40-minute halftime, which he got a lot of work on. And I saw a meme where it was like Mr. Miyagi and and the Karate Kid, like that, brought him back. But yeah, I don't know. I think Mahomes plays anyway if it's a regular game, but I just think what Andy Reid did was just lights out for a coach.
It was just so impressive to see, and I agree with you. It was, and that's the thing. It reminded me also of that Super Bowl, the 2018 season. I guess so. The game was early 2019. That Patriots Rams.
Yeah, Rams won. Yep.
Same thing. So we're not just bashing Belichick. Where Belichick out-coached Sean McVay, and that was I don't think that Patriot team is Belichick and Brady.
That was a Belichick coach job,
yeah. Right? Because the Rams weren't. The Rams, you could maybe say, were more talented than that Patriot team.
Yeah,
but they got out-coached, and that was the only fear I had going into it as rooting for the Eagles was, hey, we're deeper, we're a better team in my opinion, but it is the coach. And the QB advantage goes to Kansas City, and that's where they could get beat, and that's where we got beat was in that coach QB conversation.
Right, and then because if you have that like advantage, you're going to win most games, and against every team in the league they have that advantage. But then if you look at that, like everybody was hyping up the Eagles O-line, which is a great offensive line, but Kansas City has a really, 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 really good offensive line as well. So I was like concerned about that because I'm like, if I'm an offensive lineman for the Chiefs and I'm hearing this all Super Bowl week, all 2 weeks, how great this other offensive line is, they gave up no sacks to the team who had like 3rd most sacks all time. They were running on the Eagles with no problem. Like Mahomes had all day. It was again like it was like a perfect performance for a team that again like. I don't want to say should have lost, but they should have lost. They were down 10. Second highest, point, like second most points, like a comeback in the Super Bowl was, this one, I guess, except the other one was in New England and Atlanta, of course. But like this, they should have lost the game and they didn't. And I think truly because, again, Mahomes was great, but it was the adjustments, the in-game adjustments that changed everything.
No, it was a really great showcase. We've talked about this, I remember on our Drew Brees episode, check the archives.
Check them.
And it's still growing. Look at that quarterback-coach combo. Obviously, Belichick, Brady's high. Montana and Walsh is one. We talk about Noel Bradshaw, Staubach and Landry. Where do you think, this QB coach combination, Reid Mahomes, what do you think about that and where that, like I said, it's not done yet, but where do you rank it? I think it's high up there right now.
Yeah, it's already up there. It's for sure top 10. It's for sure top 6 maybe. You know what I mean? Like, and it's knocking on that top 3's door, man, for sure. Like, I can't put nobody over Brady Belichick. I can't put nobody over other than Brady Belichick, like Walsh and Montana. You know what I mean? Like, And then it's like, you know what I mean? Like it's comparable to a lot of other guys, like a lot of other tandems. Like Breeze and Peyton was good, but they just won one. Not just, but they won one.
Yeah,
You know,
this one's ahead of that.
yeah, for sure already. Landry Staubach, that's a great one, but this is right there with them. Man, Johnson and Aikman, no, I'm not doing that. You know what I mean? Like this is this is up there already.
I guess Lombardi Star. That's in the Super Bowl era too.
Yeah,
I guess too.
Yeah, no, you got to give them credit. Yeah.
Man, but it's high already.
Man, it is high already. Yeah, because I don't think, and the thing is, they're going to keep having success unless something crazy happens or Andy kind of like hangs it up, and I don't think that's happening anytime soon. I don't. Obviously, Mahomes is still young and is literally in his prime. Man, that's going to be. They're not going to pass Belichick and Brady. There's just no way that can happen.
I can't see that happening now.
And Walsh and Montana got 3, but I also, if say Mahomes and Andy get 3, I'm still keeping Walsh and Montana over them. And just for the simple facts, like the change, the shift of the game that they created, you know what I'm saying, like into what it is today. I think I got to elevate that.
But can we say that Mahomes and Andy are making their own shift? I'm not saying it's as great as the 80s shift, but they're doing their own shift right now too.
They are for sure. But I think it's more also like just the way Mahomes plays. You know what I mean? Like he creates a lot of stuff on his own. So I don't know. That's a tough one. I think in another 3 years we do another show, then this might be a totally different conversation. Because if they rack off another 2, like in like 3 or 4 years, that gives them 4. Like that's. And the thing is, like, if you not to cut you off, like those first couple Brady Belichick's were in Brady. You know what I mean? So it's not like, it was Brady too. Don't get me wrong, but it was more like that defense was loaded and that defense was stacked and it was lights out. It was shutting everybody down, and then Brady made enough plays. You know what I'm saying? Then obviously we all know that shifted and it became Brady, but. This is Mahomes and Reid like doing their thing from the start. Like there's no defense of like that's like helping them win these games. Like it's helping them a little bit, but it's all offense.
In fact, they've had bad defenses. I can honestly say,
right? They've had like opportunity like defenses. Like they'll get turnovers, things like that, but they weren't shutting people down.
No, the defense in those the first couple years,
first ones were terrible.
Were like bad defenses. Like they just outscored people. I mean, but if you look at
that Bills game,
that's all. Like they're shitty defenses. Honestly, they've had 5 years together, 5 AFC champions. So they've gone to the championship game all 5 years.
And I've literally like I'm witnessing it, but I don't even respect it. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, because it's just like what they do.
It's hard to comprehend, and I think I've heard people say this, not now since they won it, but during the year and in the last off season, which is like Patrick Mahomes was so awesome, he's underrated because we expect it. And I sat there going, I think you're right. I think we do exactly just. Right. I think this win kind of bumped it where people are kind of starting to not do that. But it's like, I think the past few years, it was just like, Pat Mahomes, but Justin Herbert and Josh Allen. And it's like, nah, he's the best quarterback. Like, let's put that to bed.
Even the MVP race where everybody was like, oh, it's Hurts easily. And look, my man Hurts had a great year. But if you look at Mahomes' numbers, it's just like.
He was the guy the whole time.
It was like. Damn, man. Like, Hurts had the rush and touchdowns and all that, but this dude throwing 5,000 yards and, like, 40 touchdowns, like, quietly. You know what I mean? Like, it was just Mahomes, a Mahomes season. And, like, that's a Mahomes season. It's just, man, like, I'm watching these numbers and I'm watching all these arguments, and I'm like, no, like, I think if Hurts stays healthy, he may get the MVP just so, like, it's a different name. You know what I'm saying? Like almost like the Jordan Shaq thing, like where you can't give it to them every year. but you can't. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's just like we can't give it to this dude every year.
That's a
So
good comparison.
we got to switch it up a little bit. And it's like, all right, let's give it to, Jalen Hurts because he's a fresh new name. He had a great season, but really it was Mahomes in the MVP.
No, even at Hurts' peak, he was second. Like he got to. I think some people were trying to give it to Josh Allen early on because the Bills started off hot, and it was Allen, Mahomes, Hurts was rising. Hurts never got above second, and I think even if he doesn't miss those couple games, 2 games isn't enough anyway,
right,
to knock you. Like if he was the MVP, he's the MVP in my opinion. Like that, he didn't. Like if you miss 6 games or something, I'd be like, all right, fine. He didn't miss enough games.
I think once you hit 4, you're out of the race. Like, 4 is like a month. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Yeah.
So it's just impressive that 5 straight championship game appearances, and the lowest win total they've had is 12. 12 wins is in the 5 years together.
That's nuts, man. And that's a great season. Like you go 12-4 or 12-5, whatever it is now. That's a really good season. You know what I'm saying? Like, and that's what you're doing at minimum with these guys.
So it's something that we're seeing things. We thought after the Brady run we're not going to see, but we're seeing. I'm not saying like you said, are they going to match Brady, Belichick, and the Patriot dynasty? But we're at another dynasty instantly.
Oh yeah,
instantly. So it's impressive. It is. Now we got to look at these coaches and these all-time rankings, and when you go back to our second episode,
man,
back in late or early February of 2020.
Yep.
It
was a week right after the Super Bowl.
Right.
Or right before, no. It was
right after. We did the episode
because we guessed that we gave predictions for the game.
No, but we did it right after.
Okay, I'm going to go with your memory.
Right. Yeah, we did it right after. Because Andy had gotten the ring.
Yes.
He won.
We did the other show that didn't count. We predicted the games. Yes.
Right. Correct. So it's Jose, you had the idea. It was a real good one back then of like the tiers. It wasn't just like the numbers. It was the tiers. And after Andy had gotten his first, and if you listen, we say this could change that, and we were right, it changed.
Yeah.
But we had Andy right at the top of the tier 2 coaches.
Right.
And
we were like that. We had them grouped in with like Parcells and like I had
Jimmy Johnson.
I
had Gibbs
right
as a tier 1 guy. Do you still hold Gibbs as tier 2, or do you look at him as tier 1?
I'm going with tier 1. Yeah, I definitely changed it then, I think. But the more I've dug into Joe Gibbs, which you had me do, and I appreciated that. No, he's definitely a tier 1 guy.
So, from what I remember the last time, and to me, like Jimmy was at the top, but I think Andy's over Jimmy. That was easy.
Yeah.
I think even then when he won, the top of the tier 2s was Andy and Bill Parcells.
Parcells, yep.
With this win and the 3 seasons since we did it, is Andy over Bill Parcells, who's an iconic name, an iconic coach, a turnaround guy,
and a big. We love him. We love some Parcells on this podcast. But that's 2 apiece, right? 2 Super Bowls apiece. And, you look at it, you mentioned like the turnaround thing what Parcells did with the Giants. That was an all-time great turnaround there and what he built there. And then the coaching staffs that he, the coaching tree that he has is amazing. Man, that's a tough one there. But I think with this Super Bowl, I think Andy does pass him, man. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like now Parcells was coaching in an era where it was tough to get wins, especially in the NFC East, in the NFC in general. And we've talked about that through a bunch of episodes that we've done with with Washington, the 49ers, him getting through the Eagles and all that, like in the division, the Bears, in the Central. The Rams were a little something back then. Like, yes, you had a lot of good teams in the NFC. All the Super Bowl winners were coming out of the NFC. So for him to get through that often at that time is very impressive for Parcells. But again, like, And then Reid, I'll say this, because now I'm even changing my own mind. Reid had playoff success, and there was times where his teams came up short. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm thinking, like we mentioned earlier, like the NFC Championship game against the Bucs, the Eagles were favored at home. NFC Championship game against the Panthers the following season, they were favorite. They lost that one too. You know, so I think those are big blemishes on Andy Reid's resume. Does Parcells lose those types of games? I don't think so. So I'm gonna keep Parcells over Reid.
So wow.
Yeah, barely. He's hanging on barely, but
so is Andy still a tier 2 coach then?
No. He's not. Andy did jump up to tier 1, and Parcells is staying at tier 2. No. Yeah, no. I'm bumping Andy up because Andy has gotten to tier 1 for sure. So I changed my mind again. Yeah, no. I think I'm going to do a little bit of comparison too. But
I okay.
No, Andy's definitely tier 1 for where we ranked. Like all those other coaches, and again, Parcells was tier 2. So no, I gotta give Andy that knock.
So now Andy with this win has honestly, I will say the past 3 seasons. Even I think if Andy lost this game, I would probably look at him as over Parcells. Just even with one super, but like more appearances now, definitely more championship games. He did it in multiple places. Parcells did it in more spots. Now, Parcells is a great guy to talk about, not just with Andy, but kind of what we said earlier, and this wasn't on purpose, but it kind of goes into it. Outside, he got all that he got out of the Giants, 2 Super Bowl titles. That's their all-time teams. Him, George Young, they turned that franchise around to what it is today. The blueprints of those 80s Giants are still looming over New York, to this day. But New England got to the Super Bowl, but you could say job not done with that team. The Jets got to a championship game, job not done. Dallas Cowboys did turn them around, job not done with that talent there. We saw the Cowboys even after with Wade Phillips and stuff. They had some good runs there, but they couldn't get it done. But the blueprint was Parcells. Do you look at he has that Larry Brown, kind of thing where he can't stay still. Where do you look at a coach like Parcells and can't stay still? Is that a knock? Is that a positive or neutral? Like, how do you look at that? Because besides the Giants, a lot of jobs not done. Turnarounds, but they're not complete.
Yeah. No, I that's a knock. That's a knock for me. And now the more I'm digging into this Andy Reid versus Parcells thing, yeah, Andy's definitely ahead of Parcells.
I was surprised. I'm like,
no.
I was like kind of shocked.
Yeah, he's definitely ahead. But yeah, I think that's a knock. I think what I'm saying, like the sitting still thing. I think it's important, like legacy and all that. And Parcells has a legacy for sure, but I think it is important, like to sit somewhere for a long time and just like. And he was at the Giants for a while, so he created something great there. But I think it means something more for me. Like stability is important. You know what I'm saying? Like, and for him to jump around. And then the thing is, he wasn't just like going in there and getting fired. It was just like, I'm out. Like, you know what I'm saying? I'm going over here. Like, and that never really sits well with me.
To play devil's advocate, we could even take the Giants out, the 2 Super Bowl wins, and how much bad, the years before, a lot of bad football. You look at where he went with New England, the Jets, Dallas. When he took over the Patriots in like 93, they were one of the worst franchises in sports.
Yes. Terrible.
The Jets, when he took over, one of the worst franchises in sports. Even, I think the Cowboys were in the best shape of them, but it was a bad run for Jerry Jones, and he was getting blasted. So now, to what you said earlier, like Dungy, Tampa Bay was a laughing stock, so I'm going to play devil's advocate with you. And Dungy turned them around. Parcells, even if you look at what he did after the Giants with those other 3 teams, turned around some of like the worst franchises in all pro sports. He didn't get the job done. He left. But where do you look at that? Is it still a knock because he left too soon, or is it a positive? We're asking tough questions tonight. This is tough.
I love it. I love it. Because I have a question for you too. But see, I think the Dungy thing that's a tough one. You know what I'm saying? Because it just seemed like he wasn't going to get that team over the hump. You know what I'm saying? Like, it was like tough loss. I mean, they lost to the Eagles, 2 years in a row in the playoffs,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and it was just like, you can see like they were a really good team. They just needed a few more things. And I think the quarterback was more important, but the coach is always like, I think the coaching in that example, I think the coaching was the important piece that they needed, because it wasn't Brad Johnson. You know what I'm saying? Like, but with Parcells, it's like, it's him leaving. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's not like it's tough, man. Like, I'm trying to think of those two examples. You know what I'm saying? Like, I just think it's harder for me to look at someone when they're getting fired. You know what I'm saying? Like, compared to like someone just leaving. Yeah, Parcells was let go. It was because he wanted to go. You know what I'm saying? Like, so I don't know. I think for me, it's like, yeah, you leave a little early or you leave just in time. Like, you're still creating that, like what you left. You know what I mean? Like, you built that. So if it fails, it's still like a lot of the guys that you brought in. You know what I'm saying? Like, as to like Dungy, it's like, yeah, you couldn't get him over the hump, but it's not like you left because you wanted to leave, you got fired. So I don't know. I mean, you got fired too, so that's not a good thing either. So it's tough, man. Like, that's a tough one there. You got me on that one, man. I don't know which one is like the bigger knock. You know what I'm saying? Like, what do you think? Because you're asking me all these damn questions. Like,
yeah, it's fun. I think it goes on. Like I said, it's an acknowledgement. So like the mythology that I had, like of Parcells and what he did. Obviously, the Giants is number one because it's just the impact those teams are, and they did get the job done, and he did see that team through, and that was the only place you can say that it wasn't like, man, great turnaround, but job not done. Job was done when he left. He got all he could out of those guys, that group.
Yeah.
New England, I mean, that was football was dead in Boston until Bill Parcells got there. And people in Boston can act like, yeah, we love football.
Nah.
Y'all didn't give two shits about football until Bill Parcells arrived. Let's just call it what it was. The people didn't know where Foxborough was until Bill Parcells got there. And I'm talking about people in New England did not know where Foxborough was.
They were a laughing stock of the NFL. Them, the Colts, the Bucs.
Yeah, it was bad. So that's an impressive turnaround job. The Jets was it's a positive. It's like it helped grow his legacy in a way. I guess you could say that. But Parcells is a guy who should be a tier 1 guy. And he's a tier 1 personality, a tier 1 coach. I think he's a tier 1 coaching genius, a tier 1 personnel genius.
Yeah.
But I guess to answer your question, long story short, he's a tier 2 guy because he couldn't stay still.
Right.
And if he stays still in one of those spots, in New England or the Jets for sure, I think maybe even Dallas, but definitely New England or the Jets, I believe he's winning another Super Bowl with one of those teams.
Yeah, especially I think New England, he was close. Obviously, you saw what happened. I don't think he drafts Brady and things like that, but, you know, and that was the kind of thing that put them over. But we were talking about it earlier. It was his guys. You know what I mean? Like, it was most of his guys that won that Super Bowl.
I mean, you look at who won the next 2 years, and those Denver teams were good. I think if you have Parcells and how talented the Patriots were, people forget how good Drew Bledsoe was.
Yeah. I
say if Parcells is still there, the coaching staff he had there, I'm not going to say the Broncos don't win any championships, but I don't think they go. I think New England cuts one of them off. Yeah. I think if Parcells, they stay intact, Parcells is going back to another bowl with that New England group. I mean, hell, Parcells almost beat him with the Jets in '98.
Yeah.
And got the championship game. They were up in the first half, and that Jet team, I don't think was as good as the Patriot team.
No, hell no. Benny
So
Testaverde was quarterback.
yeah, Keyshawn and Wayne Corbett, Jumbo Elliott, all those guys. So Curtis, my friend,
Curtis Martin,
my favorite
Martian, yeah.
Yeah, so it's like Parcells not being able to stay still knocks him into tier 2, and it's a shame because everything about him is tier 1, but I can't put him there.
Right, so like you did with Parcells with the Giants, right? We eliminate the Giants, we eliminate Andy Reid and the Chiefs, right, with those Super Bowls and all that. What was more impressive to you, Andy Reid's run in Philly or those runs that Parcells had with New England, the Giants, Cowboys? Because that's kind of where I'm trying to
I say on paper I have to give it to Andy because he stayed longer.
Right.
And so it was one time, but he stayed, so he gets 5 championship game appearances in a Super Bowl. You look at what Parcells had, it's 2 championship games in a Super Bowl with those other 3 teams and a couple of first-round exits with Dallas and everything like that. Andy stayed. And so he built something, the Eagles he built a team. The Eagles, if you look at the 2000s, they were the best team in the NFC.
Mm-hmm.
And, the NFC was weak, but it doesn't matter. They were the best team of that decade in Andy Reid. Parcells didn't stay long enough to get that done. And there's always the shoulda, coulda, wouldas, but you have to look at reality. Jimmy Johnson's the same way. Not as big as Parcells even, but Jimmy Johnson had a lot of magic. We talk about Jimmy a lot, but he left. And people say that's in their personality, which is cool.
That's a knock, though. It's a knock.
Yeah, you didn't stick it out. We know he did not stick out. He didn't get all he could out of those Cowboys dynasty teams. Andy got all he got out of the Eagles.
Yeah.
Andy's getting all he can. If Andy decided he's not going to, but the next couple weeks he's going to retire. I'm not looking at it like he didn't really get all he could get. He got a lot out of this team. It's like, he could have kept going, but he got he did a damn good job with Kansas City. So being able to stay and get the job done is important in coaching. We're kind of figuring that out now.
Right, absolutely. And if you look at the guys, if you look at the top 50 list of head coaching wins, you got Don Shula at 347, Belichick at 329. I think seeing a coach get 300 wins, it's amazing. We're not going to see that often, ever again, probably. I think Andy's going to be probably the last one. But you got George Halas at 324. You got Landry at 270. And you got Andy at 269 right behind Landry. So he'll catch Landry next season. And then he needs 100 more wins. Let's just say less than that. 80-something wins to pass Don Shula. They're averaging 12 wins a year.
The thing is, Belichick's going to be still coaching.
Yeah.
And so he'll be getting those wins too. So that'll be interesting to see.
Yeah, and Parcells is at 183. He's 12th. So, again, that speaks to the longevity because you got guys like Dan Reeves at 201. Coached a long time. Marty at 205. Coached a long time. And you look at other guys in that second tier. You got Parcells, Joe Gibbs, Pete Carroll's climbing. Mike Tomlin's
Joe Gibbs is tier 1.
No. I mean in this list here.
Oh, for the win list. Oh,
yeah,
okay.
Yeah, because they break them down from 10 to 11 to 20. But you got Mike Tomlin at 171. So it's definitely a great conversation to compare Andy to Belichick, to Parcells. It's a good one.
So now we have officially put Andy in tier 1.
Tier 1.
The big question is where is he compared to other? We've talked about Belichick a lot, but let's look at a Joe Gibbs, a Bill Walsh. There's Lombardi. There's Chuck Noll. There's Tom Landry. There's Don Shula. Has Andy surpassed some people, in your opinion, Jose, on the tier 1 list, or is he's just in there?
No, he's in there. He's in there. He's not. I'm not moving past any of those guys yet. Let me just look at this list one more time. Because for the most part, we have it right from our tier. Even like the top 50, like coachings, like they're all. It's pretty for the most part the same guys we had on there, except maybe for like a Joe Gibbs and trying to think who else. Yeah, that's pretty much it. So, all right, I'll rattle some names off, and you tell me if you're knocking them out, or Andy's jumping over them yet. I would say Don Shula, no. I think that's a no for both of us.
Yeah, not yet.
Yeah, Belichick, we already said no. I think the George Hallis's, no. But in my opinion, I don't know what you think, but
Not over George Hallis yet, no. Or Paul Brown.
Or Paul Brown, exactly. Tom Landry.
I think that's
That's
one.
a good one. That's a good one.
I think Landry and Shula are the ones he's the closest to, in my opinion.
You said Landry and Shula?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think the Landry one's interesting because, like you said, he's going to pass. He has as many Super Bowl rings as Tom Landry and as Don Shula.
Yeah. Oof.
You
yeah.
know, he has as many rings as them already. Landry coached in 5 Super Bowls. And he's coached in 4.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
Shula coached in 6. So they're already there in appearances. What I can say is Landry is such an innovator of the game and was his own offensive corner, defensive corner. But Landry's success was in that it was Staubach. Now, he did get to 3 title games with Danny White.
Yep.
But once Staubach left, it was never the same. Don Shula did have success, you know, with different quarterbacks.
Yeah.
Disappointing with what happened with him and Marino. Should have been better. They should be on that quarterback coach list, but they're not.
Right.
I think
that's a big knock on Shula, in my opinion.
That's a knock on Shula. Shula has some bad losses.
Yeah.
Super Bowl 3, Super Bowl 6. There's some bad losses that Shula has. So I don't think Andy's there.
No,
I really
he's there yet.
But I think I'll say this for Bigger Than the Game Nation. Andy just needs one more year like he's had the past 5 for me to be like, all right, he's going over one of them.
Nah, I'm
like he's not far. It's not like he's got to have like
the
3.
gap
like,
is not that big. Yeah,
it's like for our last. It's been 3 years for the last episode. He doesn't need another 3 years of what he's doing to overtake those guys. But I have to be just straight up like, what Andy's doing.
It's impressive, man.
It's impressive, and I think those are the 2 guys who are the closest that you can overtake. And I think Landry and Don Shula. And
okay. I don't think Chuck Noll. You can't. That's going to be tough. It's 4 Super Bowls. That's tough. Curly Lambeau. I don't know.
It's such a hard time. I know
it's hard to gauge that time.
Right.
And let's talk about Joe Gibbs. I know you brought him up. You asked me about Joe Gibbs, but since we're talking about the rest of these coaches, let's throw that name in the hat as well. That's another tough one, because, again, Joe, talk about innovator. Gibbs got that. You know what I'm saying? Like, doing it with 3 different quarterbacks.
Yeah.
It's got that. You know what I'm saying? Like, that will bump him up for me over, like, say, a certain amount of wins. You know what I'm saying? That's going to give him, like, 20 more in the coaching wins for me. Personnel, like, that's where I think Andy's got him. But, I mean, let's talk about it. Like,
it'll be hard. It'll be hard. Andy will have to have a 70s Steelers, 80s Niners, 2000s, 2010s Patriots run for him to knock off Joe Gibbs, because Joe Gibbs is tied with him right now, Super Bowl appearances, has one more win than Andy does right as of today.
Yeah.
And Joe Gibbs never had that Patrick Mahomes type guy.
I can't imagine if Gibbs had like
the best quarterback in the game, really, for a long period of time.
Man.
You know, I know Theismann won an MVP, but he wasn't the best quarterback in the game.
No.
It's like
and he put up crazy numbers. Jay Schrader put up crazy numbers. Like, fucking Jay Schrader. Like, if he had, I'm just trying to give him a quarterback in the 80s. Jim Everett. You give him Jim Everett, like, I think they do extremely much better. And that's like, he's not a subpar quarterback, but we're not comparing him to like, Montana, these guys. Like, I'm just trying to think of a guy who had talent.
Yeah, I think Jim Everett is worse than the only one I think Jim Everett's better than is like Mark Rippon.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think Theismann, Doug Williams, Jay Schrader better than Jim Everett. Mark Rippon's the biggest mystery.
Man.
And I think some like really, really deep football insiders are starting to give the 91 Washington, Redskins, that's what they were called then. They're giving them that credit of like, that's a top in the Super Bowl era. That's a top 5 team.
Yeah, absolutely.
Of the Super Bowl era. So it's like, Andy's going to have to like really rattle off like another like 2 or 3 more Super Bowl appearances, and if they convert to wins,
like a 2 out of 5 type of thing, like two Super Bowls in 5 years. I think if he does that,
like 2 more Super Bowls, you're saying,
right,
yeah,
right, because that'll put him over 4. That'll put him at 4 over Gibbs. He's got the coaching wins already, and I think at that point it's solidified.
And
it's still Gibbs had an impressive run too.
And that'll be the same with I think Walsh and Gibbs are in the same like part of that tier list, and then Belichick, Lombardi, and I think to me Paul Brown's the greatest coach of all time.
Yeah, who does not get enough credit,
Yeah, he's really the father of the modern game.
Right,
is really Paul Brown. Or if you want to say Bill Walsh the father, Paul Brown's the grandfather, however you want to say it.
Yeah.
But
he's up there.
Yeah,
he birthed on.
Yeah, pretty much. That's what it is, and so it's still just impressive that we've seen this guy quietly.
Yeah,
I think Andy Reid has really. Belichick has a lot of lore. Andy Reid quietly has become a top 10 coach of all time. Yeah. And I think everyone else on that list, minus we did our episode on Joe Gibbs, minus Joe Gibbs, everyone else is very, for whatever reason, loud and known.
Yep.
And they have a mythology about them. I think the only ones, Andy and Joe Gibbs, are kind of like under the radar top 10 coaches.
Yeah. No, I agree. Like, if we think of, some of these other coaches we were naming, there's those like NFL Films moments, like, what I'm saying, like those clips, or they're wide and they say something that we don't forget. We keep matriculating the ball down the field, something like that. Like, they have those moments. Parcells has a bunch. Even Belichick has a few. I can't go to any when it comes to for Andy and Joe Gibbs. Like, again, that goes to that, like, that quietness, and they're always like player first, and that says something too. Like, and a lot of guys wanted to play for Joe Gibbs, same way a lot of guys wanted to play for Andy Reid, and that's a big reason why. It's because, again, like, they're firm as hell, but they're more of like players, coaches, and they're giving dudes days off if they like a big win. Like, how many times we've seen Andy Reid at their game and talk about, I'll be back Tuesday, and the locker room goes nuts, and like, guys appreciate that, man. I remember Hugh Douglas, who played for the Eagles for many years. Man, he raves about Andy Reid and some of the stuff that he would do, and like, like if they did really well, like he would like cut practices, things like that. Like, and for a player, and it's like, I always look at it like, if I'm an employee and if my employer treats me like that, how can I not work hard for that person? You know what I'm saying? In the same way, like, how can these dudes not play hard for Coach Reid because he does a lot for them as well.
We've said a lot of attributes about Andy, but I guess at least for me to like kind of wrap it up because we've established top 10. But it's always fascinating for me to look at great players, but great coaches, great executives. There's never really one reason, but what's the strongest reason of why they're successful? You know what I mean? Like trying to find it. And we've given out different bunches, and maybe there's others that we haven't said. But if there's one thing, if you look at Andy's time from 99 to present, what is that? The first thing, and there's multiple, but the first thing that you look at that is like, that's why he has been a great coach.
I just think, man, like, one thing we heard a lot about, and Bill Walsh, I believe, was the one I think that started this, was like that script, right? Like those first 15 plays and stuff like that. We hear about that all the time, especially like with these West Coast teams, or West Coast offensive teams. And, most teams do it now at this point. But, the two things that stick out to me when it comes to like X's and O's and like designing a game plan, that's what I think of Andy Reid when I first think of him. Like, I have all the clips in my mind of him in the locker room and laughing with everybody, jumping around, whatever. We talked about it in our first episode of Andy Reid. When the fans were in line and he was bringing them hot chocolate and stuff like that. When it was like 10 degrees outside, they were in line for waiting for playoff tickets. Stuff like that is what I really remember. But when I think of Andy Reid, to me, what makes him great is just the way he game plans, for whatever week it is and things like that. Like those first 15 plays almost always work. Like he was always, the Chiefs are number one, I think, in the league. And like when it comes to like first drive touchdowns, like his teams are always up there when it comes to that. We always think about Andy Reid and like after a bye week, how successful he is. And most of the time he's going to get it. I think he's like 24-8 or some crazy stat like that. Like that's what I think about is like him game planning the offense. And if you give him even more time, like he's going to have success. Like there's no way you're going to be able to stop it. And I just think offensively, he's like a genius, man, when it comes to that. So that's kind of like my first reaction when I think of Andy. It's like, man, like dude can game plan his ass off. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
like,
he can.
And he's got that from me. What about you, Deremy?
I think that's a great answer. I think for me, I'm torn between it's like two. But I think if I'm going to, I guess the one thing that I will say that I think that connects for the tier one coaches, and I think in any sport, but we'll keep it to football, for the tier one coaches, I mean, you can look at the guys who are lower too, but I think definitely when you're tier one, you think differently, and you're not afraid to think differently. In sports and society, there's a lot of groupthink. Yeah. And even if you're like, I don't want to do that, like in your gut, but everyone else is doing it. I don't want to be that one guy, or
especially
that one person.
In the NFL,
right? To be different, league. Yeah. Andy, for better for worse, and I think a lot of the great coaches on like that tier one guy, because even some tier two guys or whatever, they're different, but then it's like, how boldly different were they? I think everyone on tier one in some way was very different.
Yeah.
And I think that is what I think Andy, in just how he approaches and how he game plans and how he isn't, there's a system, but yet there's not a system.
Right.
Where, he whoever he had, and I like guys like that. And you see guys who they're great and they have a system and you got to fit their system. And that's a way to do it too. But Andy, in his time, it's been different people, shapes, sizes, whatever. And it's like whatever he's got, I think to go with what you said, that's why he game plans so well, because he's willing to adapt. Hey, this guy's hurt. This guy can do this. I'm going to use him here. I'm going to use him there. And I think it's that he dares to be different.
Yeah. And
it doesn't go with the pack. And he gets criticized, or he has been criticized for it, but it's stubbornness, but it's also he believes in himself, he believes in his guys, and he's been the one who was right. In the end, he was right. Just like Bill Walsh was right when they critiqued it. And, Lombardi, people critique this guy, and Paul Brown, and all those tier one guys have been Tom Landry.
Yeah.
But they stuck with it. Chuck Noll got critiqued. They stuck with it, and they were thinking differently, and that's what got them over the edge.
Yeah, and again, it is some stubbornness. You know what I'm saying? Because I would say my only knock on Andy, it was not, I don't think as much anymore, was the stubbornness and like how he would not adjust sometimes to the game plan.
Yeah.
How he would get pass happy and throw the ball 40, 50 times, like when easily he can just run the ball. And, you got Brian Westbrook and these guys, like, I think now he's much, much better when it comes to those adjustments. But no, I think you have to have that belief in the system. And again, like I know he doesn't have, like, when you think about system, like a Landry or Walsh or Paul Brown, like these guys, like these innovators, like he had a little bit of all of that. You know what I'm saying? Like, and but you have to be stubborn and believe in that stuff. You know what I'm saying? I think that what makes him great is just like you mentioned it, Deremy. You did a good job with that. Like not being afraid of like having to change anything. You know what I'm saying? Like, and I just think when you're like that, you create consistency, and I think that's why we see them where they're at in our eyes in that tier one level, where that's exactly where they belong. Because again, it was not just like wins, it's not just Super Bowls, it's X's and O's. Again, it's bigger than a game. That's what we do this podcast. It's like, what was your legacy? What did you leave when you got to the league? Like, or you left the league. Did you leave the league better than when you got here? And all of them did. And Andy's definitely one of those guys.
Yeah. So I think this is – so we'll put him right at the bottom.
Right.
But he's in tier one.
For now.
I feel like we're definitely going to be having to revisit this again
in
a year or two, which is just amazing.
Right. We might have to revisit that list just in general.
Yeah, cause we didn't number it, but we kind of did, kind of didn't. But we kind of put it where Andy, he makes it. And the big thing was, I feel like, if you listen to the one we did back 3 years ago, Andy was neck and neck with Parcells, and I think Andy has overtaken Parcells, which is crazy because it's like Parcells, he's a name, he's an iconic name, and who would have thought Big Red would overtake him?
Remember when they hired him? Nobody knew who he was. Everybody was mad that they hired him in Philly. Like, I didn't know who the hell he was. And it was a home run hire, man, for sure.
It was a home run hire. It was. And see what you said, Joe Banner, who was a high executive with the Eagles for a lot of years, and he was a big part of the Eagles' success in those 2000s, and he was here before Andy got here, and I heard him tell before, but leading up to this past Super Bowl, he was on a few shows and people were asking him, what did you see in Andy Reid? And they had their thorough thing where they looked at all the coaches who had won at least 2 Super Bowls, and they were looking at what do they have in common, and they said attention to detail.
Oh, yeah.
And they said when Andy came in for his interview, he had a big binder full of notes.
Yep.
And he was interviewing them just as much, if not more, than they were interviewing Andy. And, hey, it was a great hire. And that's that not groupthink.
Right.
Exactly. It was thinking outside the box. He was a quarterback. He wasn't even a coordinator.
Nope. I remember the hire. I was like, what are they doing? I remember there was a few other big names out there. I can't remember the top of my head, but
and we said them in the last episode. The Andy Reid one, we mentioned them. Yeah, there were some names though. Yep.
And I was like, I'll take these guys over whoever, And then when they hired him, I was like, what? And then they fired him in the 11th season, and then it's just like, oh my god. But then draft McNabb, just like new coaches, that first draft pick is huge. And I know with Andy in Kansas City, he had Alex Smith, but then he moves up and grabs Mahomes, and the rest is history.
How mad do you got to be if you're that was a draft, our buddy Jack Silverstein.
Yeah.
No Mahomes, you get Mitch.
Yeah, and you trade way up for Mitch.
Yeah, for Mitch Trubisky.
Yeah, they jumped over Watson too, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Sheesh.
They Oof.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully they got it right with Jay Fields, Justin
Yeah,
Fields.
they did.
But
Yeah, they did.
so we'll see if that can. But man, you could have had Pat, and Pat Mahomes to me is that generational talent. He's great wherever he goes.
Right. No, absolutely.
So now Andy Reid's been a big help, and so does he win in Super Bowls as much? I don't know, but yeah, just imagine if the Bears would have had him. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
rough stuff,
Yeah. But
but
it's worked out for everyone. Well, except the Bears. But
the Bears.
yeah.
But Jose, this is a lot of fun, man. This is great, and
Yeah.
we want the people. Let us know, where do you think is Andy in that tier 1 NFL coaches? Do you think some people may think he's already above Landry or Shula or some of the other guys? Let us know. Hit us up at Twitter at Bigger Game Pod, Instagram at Bigger Game Pod. Give us your feedback, what you think. We want to see where you put Andy Reid, and if you think maybe you think he's below Parcells, who knows?
Right.
Let us know. We want to have these fun conversations with you guys as well.
For sure. And then, check out our YouTube video at Bigger Than Game Podcast, for more content we're going to be dropping pretty soon. A couple more videos that are coming. So we're excited to have those. We want to get rolling again. So this was a nice kickoff for all of that, for sure.
Absolutely. So for the man, the myth, the legend, Mr. Jose Ruiz, I'm Deremy Dove. Thank you guys for listening to Bigger Than the Game with Deremy and Jose.
Peace.